We have a quorum, so let's start our meeting. This is the meeting of the subcommittee to follow up issues relating to the three-runway system at the Hong Kong International Airport. Today's agenda is on air management in relationship to the three-runway system implementation. I have to ask the Deputy Chairman to chair the latter half of the meeting because the DAB has a reception, and I will have to attend that function as well. Let's invite the officials to join us.
要嘅喎，咁啊根據慣例呢，每次開會呢，如果同
well, as in accordance with our practice, established practice, please declare your interest, if you have any interest to declare in relation to the three-runway system. The minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of June have been sent to members for perusal. Please refer to paper CP4 1345/1617. The Secretariat hasn't received any proposed amendments so far. Can I take it that the minutes can be confirmed now? Yes, thank you. Item number 2, airspace management in relation to the three-runway system. The administration has provided a paper on the latest development of airspace management issues. It's a paper CP4 1185/1670/02, as well as a letter in reply to Deputy Chairman's letter dated the 8th of June. It's paper CP4 1343/1617/03. The representatives of CAD will be using a PowerPoint presentation to brief members on the latest development on airspace management. At the meeting held on the 12th of June of the subcommittee to follow up issues relating to the three-runway system at Hong Kong IA, the former Secretary for Transport and Housing, on the subject of air management in relation to the three-runway system, brief members on the importance of this three-runway system and the support given by the CPG, as well as the Civil Aviation Authority of the CPG have done, what the Civil Aviation Authorities have done in relation to this new system. On the 1st of July, I reported to the Presidency on the development of the new three-runway system, and the Central People's Government also issued a press release stating that this support for maintaining Hong Kong's aviation hub status and to enhance the competitiveness of Hong Kong International Authority. The CAD would maintain close liaison with the Civil Aviation Authorities so that we can gradually achieve the air flight objective of 102 flights per hour, so as to make the best use of the three-runway system. Now I would like to defer to my CAD colleagues on the more technical issues in relation to the three-runway system, and I will be happy to take questions from members after that. Mr. Choi, Mr. Ng? Good afternoon, Chairman and members. I'll be spending some 10 minutes to say something about the airspace management in relation to the three-runway system and related issues. First, the coordination of development of the three-runway system vis-a-vis Pearl River Delta airports. The former STH and the STH have already spoken on the latest developments, so I won't repeat what they have already said. Simply put, one of the important work for us is to improve the air management of Pearl River Delta airports. We have set up a tripartite working group with our mainland and Macau counterparts, with the ultimate aim of improving our capacity for our airports. And we have come up with this 2007 plan in relation to Pearl River Delta airspace management, so that gradually we would ultimately achieve the long-term goal of having 102 flights per hour at our airport. The CAD has been working with the CAAM, Civil Aviation of Macau, and CAAC, Civil Aviation Administration of China, on how to take things forward. And we have we release a joint declaration in May. Let me first of all brief members on the measures that have been implemented to improve airspace management in the Pearl River Delta. 2 more aircraft transfer points and relevant flight paths have been added to within the current system, and we have also increased the relevant air traffic handover points for flights going to and from Hong Kong, Macau, and East China to improve the system for Pearl River Delta. The purpose is to improve the efficiency and to reduce the complexity of flight management. Here you can see in gray the previous ACAD and the new ones, inter-facility data communication, and through the increase in ATC points, we can reduce the complexity of flight management. Apart from these measures, we'd like to brief members on 5 more technical points. The tripartite working group have been working on these 5 new measures. First, a direct liaison mechanism between Hong Kong and the mainland, and our respective air traffic management facilities will establish a liaison mechanism so as to exchange information and coordination on enhancement of air flight management, and also to reduce the impact on the resulting from the of the additional traffic. Mainly, we are talking about air traffic management bureaus, direct liaison mechanism between Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and Shanghai, as well as CAAC. In the past, we could only have direct dialogue with our Guangzhou counterparts. Now we can have a direct dialogue with CAAC as well as Shanghai, the Air Traffic Management Bureau. And now let me turn to AIDC. This would take the place of communication which is based on the verbal information so that we can transfer ships more effectively through ATS inter-facility data communication. And this will also enhance the accuracy of data transfer. You can see from this table, which provides an approximate picture comparing the menu, the coordination, which will involve a number of steps. For example, we have to decide on we have to inform our counterpart all verbally the flight information, and then they have to input the information.
So it is very labor intensive, but with the automation, we can take all these steps and simplify it to simple procedures. So the handover unit, they will take all the handover information and input it into the data communication system, and that could be delivered to the counterparty system, and they can decide whether to accept or have other arrangement. So when the data is completed, it can be displayed on their radar system. So that saves a lot of procedures and also increases efficiency and enhances accuracy of the data. Now, regarding progress, there have been many tests in phases. The CAD is already in another testing phase with the Guangzhou air traffic control system to ensure that the technical specifications can be met. The third aspect that we want to touch upon is the electronic departure time, and we need to coordinate these efforts in order to ensure safety. In order to enhance the efficiency, Hong Kong and Guangzhou are deploying an electronic means to take over the human intervention. Put simply, we need a lot of steps in the human arrangement. The pilot will have to announce they are ready. They will communicate with the tower control. After the calculations, they can calculate when the flight can depart, and then they will tell the ATC center, and the tower will notify the pilot. You can see that there are many steps, and it involves a lot of human intervention. But if we have electronic coordination, a lot of procedures can be saved, because when the pilot notifies the tower that they are ready, then we can liaise with the computer system in Guangzhou. We can calculate the departure time and notify the pilot. That saves a lot of time. So in this component, the CAD and Guangzhou have conducted a lot of tests, and in April this year, we have already done some testing, and the technicians on both sides are now fine-tuning the system in order to implement it as soon as possible. The fourth item is we have the ACDM system. So this is an important means to share data. It can help with transparency. It can help the stakeholders in the airports, and it can enhance the overall efficiency of the airport, especially when the volume control is implemented. We can minimize the impact to the airline companies and passengers. So we now implement the ACDM platform into the electronic coordination. So we need a lot of participants in our work. In this PowerPoint slide, we indicate how many different stakeholders are involved, for example, passengers, airline companies, and so on. So through data exchange, we can enhance the airport's overall efficiency. So that is the latest Hong Kong IA data for ACDM. Lastly, we want to enhance the capacity for traffic between Hong Kong and the eastern coast of China. We are now looking at enhancing the flight capacity and reducing the time delays. In our next phase, we want to talk about the future. We want to strengthen data exchange. We want to conduct a virtual modeling to ensure that the third runway system in the HKIA, we can ultimately reach the 102 flights per hour goal. So what do we mean by a fast time simulation? Well, we are modeling a real situation through computer software, and we can, it is very cost effective. It can deal with, can assess different facets of air traffic control. You can even have conceptual studies. The simulation can run over a long period of time, a week or 2 weeks. You can take the data, can simulate that in a few hours, and through this testing, we can conduct a reliable analysis. So this type of quantitative simulation can help us streamline our work. Lastly, I'd like to talk about that aside from the PRD measures, we also have upcoming some applications that we will consider deploying, and that would include upgrading the satellite based navigation technology. We have the performance-based navigation. So in the diagrams, these are the two PBM procedures we're using in the HKIA. Well, the AAC, they have some upgrade suggestions. So they have some new requirements for the PBN, and CAD has been keeping track of these new developments and assess whether we could do a better job. Another area is the PBCD. This is a management strategy. They deploy computer software. They look at the ATC and other different operation requirements to come up with a flight scheduling system that is very efficient. That is already being deployed in Heathrow Airport, and the CAD has already commissioned a consultant, and we're looking at the feasibility of deploying that in Hong Kong. Lastly, we want to talk about the European Wake Vortex recategorization. We call it RECAT EU. This is the US FAA and Eurocontrol proposal in 2005. They suggest that there's a minimum requirement for the wake vortex, and they have new standards. The categorization will now will be upgraded from 4 categories to 6 categories. So this wake vortex will affect runways. So through this methodology, we want to have better use of runways. So this diagram illustrates the content of RECAT EU, how they redefine 4 categories into 6 categories, and through this measure, how they can reduce the minimum distance between certain flights. The CAD has also commissioned a consultant to look into RECAT EU. CAD will observe this scheme and how it's being deployed in Europe, and we will look at the feasibility of introducing this to Hong Kong, and that would conclude my report. Thank you, Mr. So now, legislators can raise questions. Let me read out who has questions. Mr. Yu Xireng, Kok Jia Ki, Yao Chong-yin, and we do have ample time. We can start with 6 minutes, okay? Dr. Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, the Secretary said that he met with President Xi Jinping. Now, according to 1992 arrangement, we now have 86 flights, and now it's 88 flights. The reason is that we could not resolve the flight direction. Now, since President Xi is supporting us so much, can you tell us, even if we don't have the third runway, when can we reach 86 flights? Because according to the Secretary, it's almost ready by tomorrow. We have spent more than 100 billion, and the biggest risk is that we can build it, but they cannot be deployed. The 07 plan we've been following for so many years, from the previous Secretary up to now, we asked for the document, how they could reach 102 flights. There has been no reply. The Secretary at that point was the only person who knew, and the national leaders were the only people who knew. Well, since the Secretary has met with the President, so you must have some information. So I would like to urge you to provide us with the textual document so that we know when we can have the truth. And third, after hearing from CAD staff, they say it's progressing step by step. Well, they must have a timetable. That means from 2017, we have 68 flights. So when can we reach 76, 86, 96? There should be a clear timetable. Otherwise, it's just empty talk. So could the Secretary share this excitement with us? The 100+ billion we spent, was it just down the drain? Thank you for the question. Mr. Kwok was referring to the plan. I think we understand that it's a bilateral agreement, and they need to reach a consensus. If we don't have the relevant participants' agreement, we cannot make a disclosure unilaterally. It's not appropriate, and it would put a strain on trust and relationship. So, Mr. Kwok, I apologize that, as in the past, we cannot provide. There are two issues. Do you have a plan? You have a plan. It's not that we don't want to provide it. Any commercial or framework agreement, in the discussion and in the conclusion, because it involves civil aviation and a lot of policy issues, currently we don't have all the parties' agreement, and we cannot disclose. So now it's the Chinese government not willing to disclose it, so we cannot disclose it. Put simply, is that the case? Because you're representing the SAR, that's no problem. So it's now the Chinese government that is not willing to disclose, so we'll never know until the central government agrees. Chairman, I think I made it very clear. If I talk too much, I would have disclosed the negotiation content. So if Mr. Kwok, you don't disagree, the CAD can explain and how we can reach 102 flights. Well, you know that our initial design was 86 flights. So, according to you, does that mean we should reach 86 flights very soon? It shouldn't be 68. So I'll defer to CAD. Chairman, allow me to answer. Well, first of all, Mr. Kwok referred to the figure of 86. That was the 1992 outline plan issued by the Provisional Airport Authority. Now, back then, there were calculations, theoretical capacity, and at that time it was a very general, from 52 to 86 flights per hour. So after the 1994 air zone study, we realized that 86 flights per hour was not achievable. It wasn't because that the mainland didn't allow us to do so. It was more of a safety and a Langtao topology factor. So in 1999, when we calculated the runway capacity of 63 flights per hour, so by 2008 we did the study again regarding the air zone and capacity. So 68 flights per hour, that was the maximum capacity. So in a year or two ago, we had already achieved this maximum capacity.
We mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation that we're looking into some airspace management measures and some new technology, as well as air traffic control manpower. We would try to increase to a small extent the capacity under two-runway system through the AA and the THB. We have already done some study, but frankly, even if the capacity is to be further enhanced, it will be to a small extent. We will still need the third runway. As the Secretary has said, the plan for the Pearl River Delta would provide the basis for the capacity to increase to 102 flights. But since this is a process involving the continuous collaboration, so we'll look at how to enhance the airspace management so as to reach the capacity for the three-runway system. I asked when. Do you have a timeline? If you don't have a timeline, are you not cheating us? 68 from 68 to 102. What do you mean by orderly progression? When are we going to have 76 or 86? And now you don't have even some estimates. Maybe you should wait until your next round is up. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong not here. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you, Chairman. On the question of airspace, according to the presentation, the government has done its best, and the leaders of our country and also mainland authorities are in support of this plan. We have two more at handover points for the Hong Kong and Guangzhou flight information regions. Especially, we have got new transfer handover points between Hong Kong and East China. We have been suffering from serious delays because there aren't sufficient handover points. So sometimes the information has to be provided and received through indirect ways. Very often the delay would have to be introduced as a last resort. And now you want to have the three-runway system. You must instill some confidence on us. It's not just about taking off and landing of aircraft. We just want to make sure that delay will not be as serious. If you cannot assure us, then people cannot really enjoy a high level of confidence in you. So you have done so much. What would the situation with flight delays be like in the short term and in the medium term? And what would the situation be like with the three-runway system? Are we going to expect a tremendous improvement because we are lagging far behind the international norm? Well, my colleagues, of course, have data showing the number of flights taking off and landing in Hong Kong. But I would invite my colleague to brief members on the short, medium, and long term. I'll ask my colleague to supplement with data, but let me stress that delays for flight bound for the mainland because of there have been more delays because of weather and other factors. The problem is faced by flights going to the mainland from other destinations. We have a tripartite working group, and if you have been paying attention to our press releases, you know that we always attach importance to the punctuality of flights. The civil aviation authorities and airport authorities on the mainland have been trying to utilize different measures to improve punctuality and avoid delays. We would like to, of course, enhance our capacity at our airport, and some of the flights will be mainland bound. So with an increased situation whereby the demand is increasing, and therefore our airspace resources are in comparison to much stretch. I'll ask Mr. Lee to supplement with some data. Yes, we at the CAD have been paying a lot of attention to the implications of flight delays to passengers. In the recent year, there have been more delays, and my colleague has said that there are many reasons: inclement weather, restrictions of airspace, management capacities, sudden change of flight service by airline companies, delays at our HKIA are mainly related to mainland bound traffic, mainly due to the weather and air flight restriction imposed by the mainland. For example, in June and in July, there were torrential rains in many parts of central China. These factors are out of our control. According to our data, in 2017, in the past 6 months in 2017, 4,425 suffer from some delay, and for various reasons. The mainland imposed air traffic volume control measures for more than 400 times. In the past 6 months, for flights departing Hong Kong, the total number of flights departing from Hong Kong stood at 103,795. So in terms of percentage, it's not really a high rate of delay. Dr. Everett Yu, having heard your presentation, I think in the May you talk about some new measures, but you do not say as much on safety. But I think the public are more concerned about safety, because you also talk about collaborative decision making. So you are going to make decisions in collaboration with some other parties. So they may lead to some latent safety risk, because the decision is made by more than one organization. And very often no one can tell who makes the final decision. So please give us a flow chart to tell us who has the final say under different circumstances. If the two parties do not see eye to eye, how do you implement the final decision? And the people in the community have been trying to ask officials this question. Are you going to have a sharing of the different airspace strata, or you have other means to increase the number of flights to be handled under the three-runway system? Are you going to have a sharing mechanism, or are you going to have a strata system for different airports? Let's talk about the ACDM. It's just the name of the system. It's not really about handing over our decision-making power, because the respective civil aviation authorities will be doing their own work. But because it's coordinated, one authority would know better what caused the delay when the flight is in the control of the other authorities, so that the subsequent management can be better carried out. As for whether we are going to entrust some air management measures or sharing of airspace management. In the last session, airspace entrustment management is not something we have invented. Because according to ICAO, if we only refer to the airspace boundary in delineating the management duties, it will not be as efficient. So other jurisdictions and civil aviation authorities have been doing the same. So to be more effective, maybe it's important to provide some entrustment management arrangements. And this is also in line with the basic law. I would like my colleague to talk about the ACDM. In that case, I'll ask a follow-up question. If you would like to ask the other authority to do the management for you in some cases, so when the height is lower than 15,700 feet, and if it's in the other party's airspace, then what will the decision-making power be handed over? How would it be handed over when it enters Hong Kong airspace? Because with a three-runway system, we can have a flight entering Hong Kong airspace more than once during the particular journey. So you have to hand over the decision-making power to the other party more than once. What measures would you adopt to ensure flight safety? Whether we have an entrustment arrangement or other measures, the ICAO has stringent requirements. CAD and other civil aviation authorities will strictly follow those rules. Whether there's the need to hand over something, we will adhere to those stringent requirements. As to whether this is required between Hong Kong and the mainland, in the Pearl River Delta Plan 2.0, we have something on airspace management. We mentioned that it would be the most effective option, but we need more time to look into further details. But the first priority must be flight safety, and we are certainly not going to have a system whereby there will be handovers time again. In the last term of this council, we said that with an entrustment arrangement, we don't need to hand over more than one time. And sometimes because of this arrangement, it means that there will be fewer handovers. Deputy Chairman, I have a few questions. A simple one first. With regard to the reply letter, I wrote to the CAD a letter some time ago. It's CB 413431670/01.
喺 B 段嗰度咧，我就問過你哋嘅就係話香港同埋內。
In B, I asked whether after the three-runway system is up and running, what would Hong Kong and the mainland be doing about the delineation of FIRs? Would that be withdrawing of the boundary of FIR? And the reply is that there is no plan to redesignate the FIRs as decided by ICAO, and there's no need to redraw the boundary between Hong Kong FIR and mainland FIR. Can I have a confirmation of this reply? Yeah.
Okay, that solves a lot of problems. In the paper, you say that 20% of flights fly north, and the biggest problem we have, as the Deputy Director said, there are 226 restrictions, so there are 100,000 flights affected, and it's not a good comparison because we have number of flights and each number of impact can have an impact on a number of flights. So that doesn't give us a very good understanding. But if you talk about 226, there are only 365 days a year, so you can decide whether 226 is a lot or not. And I want to say that I'd like the Secretary to understand that we are not just trying to resolve the third runway system. All northbound or southbound flights, it's not just going to the mainland. We're talking about Europe and other destinations. They need to go into China airspace. And a lot of flights, as Mr. Yu Chong-yim said, refer to 15,270 feet. They have to go into that airspace. So Hong Kong, they are circling Hong Kong because flights, airplanes need distance to gain altitude. So we should look at it from an environment aspect. So every year, because of this, flights are spending a lot of extra time and fuel that it's unnecessary. So even before we have the third runway, if you can resolve the airspace problem, you should do it as soon as possible. You should do it immediately. We should actually go back when Chatlap Kok was being built. They should have anticipated it being resolved, and that was very reasonable because we didn't have the 97 handover. You said that, but it turns out that since 97 up the way to 2017, 20 years time has passed, and we still haven't resolved the problem. So when you look at the problem, it shouldn't just be the third runway. If you do the calculations, all the 20% of flights be circling Hong Kong. So my rough calculation, it's equivalent to 6 Pok-Fu-Lam reservoir worth of fuel being burnt needlessly. And at this point, I need to say that our cargo traffic, it's world number one. If you look at the freight traffic maritime, it used to be number one, and now we're at the 5th place. So these delays, it has a big impact on air cargo. So I don't know about our competitors, but the most valuable part of air cargo is for express deliveries. That makes up a very significant component and a large component of income. And what is the characteristic of express delivery? It has to be timely, and when we have more and more flights coming to Hong Kong, if we don't resolve this, it's not just our passengers, it's our world number one ranking being affected. So I think I have dealt with that, and I now need to move on to the airspace proxy control. As a matter of fact, other jurisdictions have this arrangement. I'm not saying whether it's, I don't think it's unsafe. The issue is Hong Kong is a very different region. We have basic law, and as I said just now, if to be more accurate, we are referring to Article 130. Article 130 says that in Hong Kong airspace, the FIRs should be handled by Hong Kong. So when you deal with this problem, you have to look at Article 130, and I feel that the CAD says if the airspace proxy management, if it doesn't convene Article 130, well, if you do have a legal opinion, I would like to read that analysis. We're now talking about co-location in the XLR. The government says it's not against the law, but from our perspective, the Civic Party feels that that is against the basic law. So if you say co-location, it's equivalent to the airspace co-location. That I am very worried about that. So I'd like the government to answer that, especially how it doesn't contravene Article 130 of the Basic Law. That's a very detailed question. Thank you. Could you answer briefly? Thank you, Chairman. Regarding Mr. Tam's questions on environmental friendliness and our global ranking, #1 ranking, we agree with that. We'll continue to work on these outcomes. Regarding the airspace and our basic law, the High Court in March 2016 had already struck down the judicial review, and they said that they expounded on the airspace arrangements. So if it's managed by a counterparty in order to provide better air traffic control, that does not mean that Hong Kong is forfeiting its airspace and management or its responsibility and so on. The airspace still belongs to the ambit of the relevant authorities, so there's no breach of basic law. I think the court's ruling is made very clear. It is in line with the basic law. Thank you. Next, Mr. Luk Jong Hong. Thank you, Chairman. The airport authority have deployed so much resources to build the third runway, and the public has high expectations. So 102 flights is a goal. We understand that you might not be able to achieve that in one go because we do have competition. So I have a question. The dual runway system, is it already at maximum capacity? And the bottleneck is not airspace management. I just want to clarify that because we can have a logical deduction on how it would affect the third runway. So we hope the third runway, we don't want it to be hamstrung by the airspace management. So I see there's a tripartite working group comprised of the CAD, CAAC, and CAAM to deal with air traffic management. Well, another important stakeholder is the military, the Air Force. They will use some of the airspace. So I want to know, do we have any communication channels with the Air Force to see how we can better manage the airspace? So I don't know how much airspace the Air Force uses and so on. So do we need some communication in this area? Of course, we respect national security use. So how do we strike a balance? So CAD, are they doing any work in this area? I'd like to defer to CAD. Chairman, let me answer Mr. Luk's questions. First of all, our two-runway capacity, it is already at the saturation point or bottleneck, 68 flights per week or 420,000 flights per year. It's very close to capacity. So why did we say that? And we also answered Vice Chairman, the Deputy Chairman, how we can maintain our ranking in air cargo. We're very concerned about this, and in our PowerPoint we mentioned that through new management measures, through new technology, but all this needs time and human staff resources. So we would like to have an increase. For example, last year we could only there are 420,000 flights per year. So we have 1,150 flights per day. So through some fine-tuning, such as we shut down one runway at night for maintenance and repairs. So if we increase staff, and we can now handle 1,170 flights per day, and we hope that before the third runway is implemented, we can increase it a little bit. But through the AA Airport Authority study, this increase cannot increase a lot. We're talking about a 4%, 5% increase. So we can only increase that much before the third runway. So therefore, the third runway is an urgent project. We also have human resources increase in the airport. By 2024, when the third runway is completed, as Mr. Look said initially, we might not reach 102 flights per day, and there is some room through new technology. We can increase that number, and according to the airport authority and our flight needs, we can increase it bit by bit. Regarding the second question on the relationship with the Air Force, the Hong Kong FIR, the CAD will be responsible for our own planning and design. So if the PLA in Hong Kong, they will also communicate with us. So I think Mr. Look is referring to the mainland military. So we will have to work with the CAAC and communicate with the mainland military. If we're talking about the third runway, so whether it's the president or the different ministers, they support HKIA's third runway, and that includes meeting our goal of 102 flights per hour, and that has the support of the president and the ministers. Ms. Tanya Chan, I have to excuse myself, and Deputy Chairman will have to take my place. Just now, we were in the education panel and the 5 billion. So first of all, I want to ask about the implementation plan. You said that you would reach the goal of 102 flights per hour. So what was your time frame? Could they anticipate the needs of the air traffic because it was signed back in 2007? So I'd like CAD to explain. First of all, in 2007, we signed the Pearl River Delta Region Air Traffic Management Plan. What that included, that anticipated the future needs of the Pearl River Delta. So it's not just Hong Kong needs. We included the 5 airports, the Guangzhou Baiyun, Shenzhen Bao'an, and Zhuhai Airport, and Macau. So that included all their needs, and there's also a time schedule. What was your time frame? You anticipated your needs. You could not just say 50 years or 100 years. So what was your forecast? The forecast target was 2020. Well, 2020, my understanding is that the third runway will only be completed by 2023. So does that mean that by 2020 you can achieve 102 flights per hour? So we don't have to wait for the third runway. You can already reach 102 flights. So I'm just following your logic. Is that the case? Why are we? Well, of course, so we do need the third runway. The forecast was that by 2020 we would build the third runway, or we had assumed that it would be built by 2020 and we'd have 102 flights per hour.
需求同埋數量去
So the agreement was signed on that projection, on the assumption of that projection, and now we estimate that the third runway system will be up and running in 2020, and then we will be able to achieve that goal. Well, such agreements are very flexible. 2023, 102 flights, and 2024, and this goal was originally for 2020. As Mr. Luk Chung Hong has asked you, back then, well, we have read some past papers. The Provisional Airport Authority did some assessment. It's because of geographical constraints, because of airspace issues, and also some constraints. The original capacity was 86 flights per hour. Because of airspace constraint with a two-runway system, there's a shortfall of 18 flights per hour. We can only manage to do 68. We're not able to achieve the original maximum of 86 flights. Why do you think that you can manage then with a three-runway system 102 flights? Well, the price of the third runway is really very exorbitant. It's really expensive. Those problems could not be resolved. Why is it that when we have the third runway, the problems would have been could be resolved? Is it that they are not going to liberalize the restrictions if they don't see the third runway? Ms. Chen talked about 86. It was under the 1992 master plan. It was a theoretical maximum capacity, and that is the number of flights was put at 52 to 86. And it said that the capacity would be restricted by the terrain of Lantau Island. And they already stated that this particular factor was not taken into account at the time. And now we have since enhanced the capacity from 63 into 68 in the past couple of years. Even if we adopt the latest technology, the latest management options, and also even if we increase the manpower, it would not be possible for us to increase it to 86 flights. Under the plan for PRD version 2.0, the target of 102 flights are based on similar calculations as the one for 68. Therefore, we are confident that we can achieve that goal of 102 flights, but provided that we introduce some new measures and with increased manpower. But that would be also achieved gradually, not that we are going to achieve it when in 2024. I don't want to see this description of orderly progress abused. Do you have anything more specific? although you may say that it's a range, it's a guesstimate, 100 to 102, 56 to 68, and you should tell us what you expect the capacity will be like in 5 years' time. You should have a range, some draft. Maybe you can wait until your next term is up, because time is already over. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, the paper states that through better air management, we can maximize the capacity of our runways. And it's hoped that with a three-runway system, we can achieve the target of 102 flights. This is an important development, but the entire paper doesn't talk about an even more important question, and that is noise. Deputy Chairman, because of airspace control, the landing of flights for the north-south traffic is a problematic arrangement, and fuel is wasted, and at the same time we have more noise. It's hoped that with more introduction of electronic management systems, we can more efficiently regulate flight landings and departures. But residents are very concerned about noise, especially at night, and whether we are talking about Sha Tin, Tsuen Wan, or Park Island. The residents are all saying that this is a serious problem. Are they going to be benefited from your air management improvements? We're of course very concerned about aviation noise pollution. But with new generation of aircrafts coming on stream, this will help. And we have a very accurate satellite guide navigation system. And flight paths of civil aviation aircraft are also properly regulated. Well, residents are not complaining about daytime noise, although there is also noise, and they are more concerned about nighttime noise pollution, especially from air freight carriers. They think the aircraft for the air freight are worse in this regard. I'll defer to Mr. Choi. In our design for the three-runway system, we have already, the AA has already completed the EIA. The NEF 25 contour will not be expanded and cover more residents, but we understand that in the vicinity of the airport, there are already residents affected by noise at night to some extent. We'll continue to monitor the situation, and we'll make sure that things will not be worse than what it is now. And through the introduction of new aircrafts, we hope that, and also new technology, we hope to further reduce noise. Actually, annually, we'll be answering similar questions, either from Mr. Leung and from other members. The control measures are ongoing measures. So you continue to monitor the situation, and you hope that with new aircraft that they'll be quieter, but there are no specific measures that you can tell us that which will work. Well, what about the measurements? The data that you have been gathered over the years, but that's not very meaningful, says Mr. Leung. But the AA has introduced a quota control, and that is to say, more noisy aircrafts would be subject to a quota if they are to fly at night, and that's one of the measures to control noise. And that's also a measure to make sure that we can fulfill the EIA for the three-runway system. That is to say, the NEF-25 contour will not be expanded as a result. So we continue to monitor, but at the same time, whether we're talking about off-site monitoring, and also we would, as far as possible, make sure that noisy aircraft will not be flying as much at night. Well, you have been talking about these measures for years. The thing is that we haven't seen anything accomplished. We have not seen real improvements over the year. And you keep saying that you would monitor the situation. And I will tell you that the monitoring has not been effective. And you then respond by saying that we'll continue to do more monitoring. We hope that through improvement in airspace management, we will see some improvement. But it seems that it's not going to happen. I would like to supplement on concrete measures that we have taken. We have long established air pollution, noise pollution monitoring, starting from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. for flights flying south. They would try to avoid residential areas, and we have been adopting this measure for years. Under the three-runway system plan, as my colleague have said, we will pay attention to the NEF-25 contour after the three-runway system is commissioned. We will make sure that the affected areas will not be larger than what the present areas are. On the question of how the three-runway system is going to be operated, every night we are going to use this southern runway to a lesser extent, and that is to say, residents at Park Island who are now being affected would experience a reduction in noise in the future. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, I have to declare my interest, first of all, that I'm a member of the AA. We have to make use of our runways, and that's more important, even more important when we have three runways. I know that the airline companies and the AA have been making improvements over noise, and they have expended a lot of efforts, but we know that aircrafts create noise, but we cannot have aircraft with engines run on electric power. We don't have that, but for new aircrafts such as 777, A380, their noise levels are 25% lower than older aircrafts. So if we can reduce noise through landing and takeoff restrictions of older aircrafts, because from 11 to 7 you have the so-called a close period. If we have no noise aircraft, including commercial, private jet,
喺嗰個時間你可以開放多啲啦。當然你唔符合呢個噪音標準嘅。
You relax the rule for quieter aircrafts. I think this would enhance the utilization of our runways. We have heard that after 11, after 12, no landing and takeoff will be allowed. But there are aircrafts departing in the middle of the night, because if they are bound for Europe, they will be at the Heathrow at 4 a.m. and Heathrow is open for landing at 5, and then they need to turn round and round over the airport. That's not environmentally friendly. Can the AA and the CAD improve the arrangements to enhance the number of aircraft that we can handle without increasing the nuisance for residents?
機場管理局
My understanding is that the AA is working very hard. The number of flights that can be handled per day, and through these measures, whether it's passenger or cargo, the flights have increased. Now, regarding restrictions, I'd like to defer to CAD regarding our policy. Well, actually, Mr. Lam is correct. New aircraft, they might be smaller, or even large new aircraft. Their noise cancellation technology is better. And just now we mentioned that noise at night, it's more sensitive than during the day. So from an environmental assessment angle, NEF 25, the threshold, it's more stringent for nighttime noise. The quota control scheme in the AA wishes to encourage the airline companies to use quieter airplanes, especially at night, because these quiet airplanes, they can add to more flights per hour, and in the coming years, before the third runway is complete and the second runway is close to maximum capacity. So no matter, it's very important to the AA and to the overall economy. So through the quota control scheme and assuming the quota control scheme, if it cannot help the airline companies reach their goals, for example, in the past we've seen we have Chapter 3 aircraft, and through mandatory measures we require airline companies to phase out these old aircraft and use new aircraft. So we will consider that, but currently we wish to use the quota control scheme to monitor the noise and encourage quiet airplanes to use the HKIA. Well, we also need to express our views to the airline companies. They need to deploy more of these low noise aircraft to Hong Kong. If we want more flights in Hong Kong, they need to comply with our requirements. So I think it should be good for the logistics industry and the environment in Hong Kong. So that would conclude the first round. And the second round, Mr. Kokak is not here, so let's keep it at 5 minutes. I'd like to follow up on the airspace issue. There was another question that I didn't ask. In my letter to the committee, there's an estimate. We're now assuming the airspace can be handled, and we have 102 flights per hour. So 3 years ago, I already asked the secretary that if the airspace cannot be resolved, and after we built the third runway, and let's say if the airspace doesn't change, so how much what will the number of flights be down from 102? And at the time, Professor Anthony Chung said that he would answer me. I would like the government to respond. I had asked in the letter, but you did not respond. Thank you for your question. I think we made it clear. The third runway, this is the outcome of the tripartite working group, and we can have a maximum of 102 flights per hour. And the chairman asked a what-if question. Well, first of all, we don't wish to speculate. We want to achieve our goal. And Chairman, your suggestion was that would there be other calculations? And we are making plans according to different scenarios. So the chairman's concern will be followed up. But we hope that we have the mainland's support. We want to resolve the issues, and we think we can achieve 102 flights per hour. But we will follow up on your concern. Well, I don't want you to follow up. I want you to take action. I think the government, the mainland central government, is willing to see 102 flights per hour, but our competitors are thinking different. So might our competitors do something so that we don't achieve this? Well, let's not speculate along those lines. So let's say if we need to know if we don't achieve our airspace management, then how far will we be from the goal of 102? So let's assume we cannot resolve the airspace question, and we reach 95. That's not a big difference. But if you say if we cannot resolve the airspace and we reach only 78, then it's a big problem. The government will now need to place a priority. So even if you don't disclose information, that doesn't matter. But we need to know the figures if you cannot resolve the airspace issue, because it would end up as a white elephant project. Because if you can't resolve airspace, and if it's so restricted, just now the deputy director has said you cannot resolve the noise issue, because your noise cannot be worse than current status. So you have to deal with flights being able to fly directly northbound. So aside from not reaching 102 flights per hour, the fact is that you will be able to reach more than 68 flights per hour, but they will be using the current airspace and routes. So whether it's Dongchong or Ma Wan residents, they will have to bear with more noise, and it will lead to another environmental issue. You cannot add from the basis of 68 flights. That's why I've been following up on this for so many years, and they had pledged to do so. Thank you for your question. I think any national action is not taken lightly. So if we look at the National Council opinion on, you can find that document on the internet. It's the 2016 on line 3 of page 2, the guiding opinion of the State Council on deepening the cooperation. They say they support the third runway in Hong Kong IA, and they want to consolidate Hong Kong's role as a logistics hub. They want to further strengthen Hong Kong's airport cooperation with the 9 other provinces. So I think if it's an open document where they declare their support for Hong Kong, I don't think that airspace will not be resolved. Now, regarding the noise issue, I'd like to defer to AA. Mr. Choi? Well, actually, the Secretary said that airspace coordination, it's an ongoing work, and our goal is We are aiming at 102 flights or 620,000 flights per year. So we are confident that aside from the president and ministers supporting that, well, the AA and the CAC, especially our work regarding air traffic control, it's ongoing. We had spent some time on analysis, and that would include our flight routes and noise impact. As Chairman said, we are law-abiding, and we pay a lot of attention to the environmental assessment. We will follow up on all these issues and comply. Thank you, Chairman. When you answered my question, it wasn't very clear. I'd like to follow up. If you say that the airspace proxy management, your counterpart will manage it, well, there has to be a line. Otherwise, all of Hong Kong airspace would be delegated. There must be a line. So there would be a transition. So I'd like you to elaborate on that. I'll defer to technical experts. So even if we don't have the proxy management, we have to hand over from one control center to another. So there are clear demarcations. They either hand it over early or late. That is the rough idea. That might be more efficient, because if it's going to a certain destination, the earlier you take over, you have a better use of resources. So Mr. Lee or Mr. Ng, they are the air traffic control experts. Thank you. I'll use a PowerPoint from last year. I'll use a current example. For example, if we look at this slide, Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia, they have a Kuala Lumpur and the Singapore air traffic control. In the blue box, that is the Malaysian airspace, the FIR. In the middle, we have a yellow part, like a staircase. This part is an agreement between Malaysia and Singapore. So if they depart from Changi and if they pass through Kuala Lumpur, Singapore can manage this. So that means when the flights are in this area, Singapore will provide the service. It's very clear that if airplanes, if they require assistance, it will be provided by Singapore. And outside this area, it will be handled by Kuala Lumpur. There won't be a situation where we don't know who manages what. In this example, we see that the Singapore FIR, when they fly north through this area, it is the Malaysian airspace. They don't have to hand it back and forth. They don't have to hand the information back and forth. They can continue providing the service. I've read this. I understand. I want you to give us a Hong Kong example. Well, in the air traffic management, we had explained in the 2007 plan it's not just airspace or one route. In the whole 207 plan, we could have an arrangement of 102 flights. I want this diagram for Hong Kong airspace. Well, I can tell you, in the past, I'll give you a simple example. Handover point, when it's implemented through the system, we will exchange information. So, according to the International Civil Aviation Organization, we will implement these arrangements. So we've disclosed all this information. So how the altitude, the routes, everything can be shared.
聽唔明。
I don't understand when. Well, as I've said, when it's the time to implement these measures, then in accordance with the required rules of the ICAO, we would promulgate the information. Who will regulate you? The promulgation will be done by the CAD and other relevant authorities. Who will regulate your promulgation? Well, the service is provided to the pilots, airline companies, and so on and so forth. The deputy chairman is a pilot. He needs to know the flight paths, and he'll know where the airspace, air control would be handed over to another air control authority. And at this point, we are still working in the tripartite working group, and so it's not the right time to make any announcement. As the Secretary said, whenever it's the right time, when the opportunity is already ripe for an announcement to be made, we would make the announcement. All right? Any further questions? Third round? It starts with me. According to Mr. Chan, you are very confident that you are going to achieve 102 flights as a goal. I can perhaps say why I don't think you should not be so confident. Back in 92, 94, we said, that's before the reunification, we said the airspace management would have to be resolved, and the argument was sung because after the reunification would mean that we have the one country, two system arrangement, and now the number of flights was reduced from 86 to 63. I think you only gave us a higher estimate when the airport was planned. The terrain, the mountain on Int'l was already there. In 2007, 10 years from 2007, we haven't seen any major breakthrough. There's been some amendments. The reason why we have this war in the air, I think the CAD may be able to preview why we have this war. I don't want to repeat my points about the noise, wastage of fuel, and so on and so forth. There is a big incentive here for us to seek an early solution. Mr. Chan, please understand that this problem has been with us for 19 years. So I've been asking myself this question. We're not talking about a long time ahead. It's just 2020. If this cannot be resolved, how serious is the problem? If it remains an unresolved issue. Don't say that. I'm not suggesting that we should not trust the Chinese, the president. But you can ask your consultant to do some simulations. That what would happen if this cannot be achieved. That's why Professor Anthony Cheung acknowledged this to be a very question and promised to do it. This will also affect how much urgency, how much effort you would put into the negotiation. Let's say if it's just a small drop, you may think that it's not a big deal. But if the capacity would drop to 80 flights, then perhaps you have to step up with your efforts. It's not that I don't trust the CAC or the secretary. I hope you try to understand how serious the problem might be from the CAD. You must get prepared. Thank you for your concern on our aviation industry. Of course, we share the same objective. We expect to achieve 102 flights, and will not be so silly as not to provide for contingencies. I accept your proposal, and I will take a good look after the meeting. And I hope members will understand that this is about multilateral negotiation. And even if we have completed the analysis, we may not be able to publish the data or let you know. I understand your suggestion. I will make sure that what you have suggested has been done, and if necessary, we will come back to explore the relevant matters with you. You talk about orderly progression from 68 to 102 flights. Would there be any milestones in the interim? Let's say if you resolve a particular problem, you can increase it to 80, and if some adjustments can be made, you can be further increase to 95, and then ultimately we can achieve 102. I think members would like to know what hurdles there will be for you to overcome, and the steps that you need to take before you can realize the objective of 102. I would like to get a briefing like that. And also, so some aircrafts are very quiet. For example, private jets. And I don't think it would be a big problem to allow private jets to fly at night, because they comply with very high noise standards. So perhaps I can get a response here. Well, your suggestions are noted. We will follow up the matter at the tripartite working group. But as I have repeated, it's not that I'm stubborn. I hope you members will allow this multilateral negotiation, which involves collaboration and the fact that we cannot disclose facts before they have given the consent. As government officials, we have to make sure that our aviation industry can continue to grow, and also we need to maintain our status as an international aviation hub. Next time, when you talk to the mainland, perhaps you can also ask what information can be made available to us at this stage, just to allay concerns. I know the constraints you face, but members are very concerned about what would happen if certain steps have been taken. Perhaps you will try to explain to the mainland side why we want to know more. Other members? No? I thank you for your attendance, Mr. Chan and your team. This is the first time you attend this subcommittee meeting, and I look forward to more chances to exchange views with you. AOB now. the consultancy's study on the AA's financing plan will be completed at the end of this year. On the 12th of June, members resolved that after the relevant financing study has been completed, we will have a meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for 29th of September at 10:45. So members, please note the meeting date and time. Yes? Do you have the timetable? So they do have a timetable that would involve the publication of the report before the 29th of September? Yes, indeed. This subcommittee would be given a priority, may be given a priority if we apply for an extension. We will be given a priority if we apply for an extension, but we haven't done so. I would submit an application to the House Committee if members don't object. All right, if there's nothing on the AOB, then meeting's adjourned. Thank you.